Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. The tennis world has packed its bags for the exciting Chinese swing. We've got the China Open in Beijing and the Shanghai Masters on the horizon. And there are storylines everywhere you look, from the new chapter in the Alcaraz-Sinner rivalry to the return of a home favorite and the broader question of China's place in the sport. Let's dive into our key topics with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, let's start with the big one. Alcaraz's magnificent win at Flushing Meadows, defeating Jannik Sinner in that final, felt like a massive statement when, the narrative is all about the two-man rivalry in men's tennis. But now, Tianyu, does this US Open title give Alcaraz the definitive upper hand against the Sinner, and do you expect this trend to continue?
Well, I wouldn't say Alcaraz has fully taken the upper hand over Sinner yet, because yes, winning US Open was a huge statement. There's no doubt about that. It just showed his ability to rise to the occasion on the biggest stage. But if you look at their head-to-head history and the way their games match up, I think it's still very much a back-and-forth rivalry. Sinner has beaten Alcaraz in big moments too, and he's got the consistency and firepower to push him every single time. So I would call it more of a deadlock than just one guy completely pulling away. So what Alcaraz might have right now is the mental boost. Beating Sinner en route to a slam title gives him a lot of confidence, and sometimes in these rivalries, a little edge can just really matter. But I would say the gap between them is really thin. So I honestly think we're going to see the balance shift multiple times over the next few seasons, depending on form, fitness, and maybe even services. So looking ahead, I expect Alcaraz to ride that momentum. The conditions usually reward aggressive baseline play and quick movements, so which just suits Alcaraz perfectly. But I think the same goes for Sinner too. He's comfortable on hard courts, and he'll want to make a statement after falling short in New York. So yeah, I would be surprised if Alcaraz doesn't at least make a deep run, but I wouldn't rule out another head-to-head clash with Sinner in latter rounds. So if that happens, it just could go either way, and that's what makes this rivalry so exciting right now.
Yeah, I think this rivalry was about back and forth before.
Yeah.
I mean, at the French Open, Alcaraz made that miracle comeback to defeat Sinner, and then at Wimbledon, Sinner made the comeback. Then at the US Open, it seems like the momentum is now in Alcaraz's hand, but I think things can shift very quickly. Brandon, what do you expect from this two-man game? Maybe another Sinner-Alcaraz finale?
Hopefully, I think that would be fantastic for fans all around the world. I think anytime Sinner and Alcaraz come head to head, I think it's fantastic for any diehard viewers of the sport, but even for casual viewers, just because the rivalry is so immense. But that being said, we have spoken about the shifts between these two stars, going back and forth, and for a couple of months it looks like Sinner's the favorite. A couple of months it looks like Alcaraz is the favorite, and they kind of seem to hit peak form at different times throughout different seasons. But that being said, I think I watched this US Open final, and a lot's been said about Sinner being in and out of tennis, with all of the off-court difficulties that he was dealing with, and I think he was also rumored to have some sort of a stomach issue throughout the US Open. So I mean, there are a couple of excuses that can be given for his poor-ish performance at the US Open. But away from that, if you're just looking at Alcaraz, the improvements from him have been so immense that with his age and experience already at his age, and the talent already being displayed at his age, and the titles that he's already won at his age, it's pretty scary, I think, for any other male tennis players out there. The talent's always been there, the athleticism's always been there, but he was always kind of a rough product. I think that he was always making far too many unforced errors, often a lot of poor decisions. seemed to be able to be beaten if an opponent's tactics were on point. His service was often erratic. He seemed sometimes unable to add variety to his game, particularly when it came to softer touches. In that US Open final, it looked like all of those concerns had gone completely out the window. He looked so focused and so in control and erratic compared to how he had been in the past. His first service and just service accuracy overall had improved immensely. He was showing different sides to his game. He was showing, soft touches around the net. And he was just looking like and defensively, he was also looking, returning everything that Sinner was hitting towards him. So he was just looking almost unbeatable at this stage. And Sinner didn't play particularly badly, but just Alcaraz looked like this really unstoppable force. And I think the confidence that he would have gained from that, and I think the eye-opening that would have happened from Sinner in that relatively easy victory for Alcaraz, I think it's going to be something difficult for Sinner to overcome. Just the level that Alcaraz has been able to reach, at least at this US Open. Whether he's able to maintain that throughout the season and remains to be seen. But I think that at his age and with the quality and variety and improvement that he's showing this season already, I think that Jannik Sinner has a long way to come to getting back to beating Alcaraz at least on a consistent basis. But I also think that Sinner is always underestimated. He seems to be able to bounce back from disappointment very quickly. And even at the end of that match, in his post-match speech, he seemed very relaxed and kind of congratulated Alcaraz and said, "Well done, you were the better man on the day." And he didn't seem, devastated by the loss as so many
Yeah.
other finalists generally are. So I think that, Sinner does seem to have that ability to bounce back. And he also, I think he seemed proud to be able to get as far as he did, considering everything that he was dealing with, away from health issues and, time away from the game and all of that sort of thing. I think getting through to the final and putting up a decent performance against an incredibly strong Alcaraz, I think would have given Sinner some confidence, even though I still feel like Alcaraz won that final relatively easily. So I think that, yeah, the rest of the season is going to be, exciting. But I think Alcaraz going forward into the future, I think is definitely has the edge right now. And if he continues with this momentum and Sinner kind of stalls even for a couple of months, I think there is a risk for at least Sinner that Alcaraz could jump ahead of him pretty significantly. So I think that Shanghai in particular is going to be very interesting to watch. But I think at this point in time, Alcaraz, like I said, at least for now, I think is head and shoulders above Sinner because I was totally blown away by that performance in the US Open final, just because all of the areas that we've kind of said that Alcaraz needs to work on in previous podcasts and chats that we've had, he seems to have fine-tuned all of those weaknesses in his game very quickly, but also incredibly efficiently. I'm struggling to see any weaknesses in Alcaraz's game right now.
Right. I agree that Alcaraz now has got the upper hand against the Sinner. I mean, the sixth Grand Slam in his career and the second in 1 year definitely puts him ahead in major counts, and also the head-to-head record echoes this. But I would put the brakes on calling it a definitive upper hand for Alcaraz in this direct rivalry. I mean, I always say, Alcaraz has this explosiveness on the court. Sinner is always the more consistent player between the two on the tour, and the Shanghai Masters might be occasion to prove this. And I always believe that from round one to the semifinals or the final, Sinner is the more reliable option going forward. And when the best of five contests become, best of three, Sinner's disadvantage in his endurance against Alcaraz might be not that obvious. Yeah, for Grand Slams, I would admit that it seems like Alcaraz has taken the edge. But if put the overall performance on the tour into account, I would say Sinner is still the more trustworthy player. But for Sinner, he's playing a very packed schedule, especially in China.
Yeah.
First in Beijing and then in Shanghai back-to-back. That's a lot of tennis.
Yeah.
So Tian, are we taking a look at a player maximizing his opportunities in China, or is he risking, burnout that could hurt his title hopes in one or even both tournaments?
Yeah, I think playing back-to-back tournaments is definitely going to affect him, because we saw at the U.S. Open how fatigue started to creep in him. I mean, in early rounds, he was cruising, just blowing people off the court. But when it comes to the latter stages, when the match is stretched into the second week, you could see him laboring a little bit more, especially in that final against Alcaraz. His legs didn't quite have the same spring, and when the rallies went long, he struggled to keep the same intensity and pacing. So on top of that, he came into the US Open with some injury concerns. I think I remember that he had a setback or minor injury just a couple of weeks before the tournament. So that alone just makes me think maybe a more cautious schedule should have made sense. Playing in China Open and then immediately Shanghai Masters puts a lot of stress on the body. And these aren't small events either, because just both feature stacked fields when every round feels like a battle. So the danger with Sinner is that he might be tempted to overplay himself just to hold on to his ranking or trying to chase Alcaraz. But in the long term, I think if he doesn't manage his body well, the fatigue and the injuries will catch up. So personally, I would rather see him take a week off, just recharge, and then just attack the bigger stages fully healthy.
Right, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. In the UEFA Champions League, Paris Saint-Germain battled from a goal down to grab a 2-1 win over Barcelona in a gripping encounter, with the defending champions overcoming a raft of injuries to secure a valuable victory away from home. Real Madrid beat Kazakh side Kairat 5-0 on the road for their second win. Kylian Mbappe scored a hat-trick for his 13th goal in 9 matches this season. Coach Xabi Alonso praised Mbappe's incredible performance after the victory.
Está en un momento.
He's at a point where practically every match is decisive. He's effective, clinical in front of goal, and we have to link up well with him. We have to do a lot of things to create chances for him, and today that was proven.
Elsewhere, Victor Osimhen scored an early penalty as Galatasaray stunned Liverpool 1-0 in Istanbul. Jose Mourinho enjoyed a warm welcome but a disappointing return to Stamford Bridge. A first-half own goal gifted Chelsea a 1-0 win over his new Benfica side. Atletico Madrid smashed Frankfurt 5-1 at home for their first win in the league phase this season. Marc Marquez sealed his 7th MotoGP World Championship at the Japanese Grand Prix with 5 rounds still to go. The Spaniard finished second behind Ducati teammate Francesco Bagnaia, a result that gave him an unassailable lead over his brother Alex in the standings.
Super strange feeling. Of course I feel happy, but first feeling is like I feel in peace with myself. I mean, the first sentence, as I say in Spanish TV, is like, wow, I was mark against mark during 5 years. Mark against injury, but especially about mental side was difficult.
The title marked his first since 2019 and the end of a long road back, overcoming years of injuries and setbacks to reclaim his place atop the sport. Jannik Sinner was back to his best in a 6-2, 6-2 win over American teenager Lena Tian in the ATP China Open final, as the world number 2 picked up his 3rd title of the season. The 2023 champion sealed win to become the second man to claim multiple titles at the ATP 500 tournament after Novak Djokovic. Chinese Olympic champion Zheng Qinwen retired in the deciding set of her 3rd round match at the China Open against the Czech player Linda Noskova due to persistent elbow pain.
I didn't finish the match tonight. I'm really sorry because I always say I want to stand till the end, but I just had the first surgery in my career. That's why I was opting for a more conservative approach.
Zheng underwent surgery in July and missed more than 2 months on tour. The 22-year-old only returned this week, admitting she was not fully fit but wanted to compete in front of home fans despite her team's advice. Carlos Alcaraz claimed the Japan Open crown in Tokyo on Tuesday with a 6-4, 6-2 victory over world number 5 Taylor Fritz. The Spaniard impressed throughout the week before sealing the title in straight sets. The victory marks Alcaraz's 8th title of 2025. Welcome back. A story that's huge for home fans in China is the return of Zheng Qinwen to the tour. She's expected to play at the Wuhan Open in her hometown. She's been out since July with her surgery on his elbow. She's missed some court time, but she's still a world top 10 player on the tour. So, Tianyu, what can we realistically expect from Zheng Qinwen when she comes back on home soil?
Zheng Qinwen has been away for a few months after that elbow surgery. You can see she's been working hard to keep her fitness up. And I think that's very important because when you come back from an injury, the physical parts is one thing, but confidence in your body is another. But that said, I think our expectations should be kept realistically, because joint injuries, especially elbows, are very tricky to deal with for tennis players. You use that joint in every swing, every serve, and every rally. It'll take a lot of time to really trust it again in high pressure matches. So I don't expect her to immediately start winning titles, but the most important thing is that she gets through matches healthy, build her rhythm, and just gradually climbs back to her best. So for Chinese fans, I think the excitement is less about whether she wins right away, but more about just seeing her back on court. I think Zheng Qinwen has the potential to be a long-term star, but only if she stays healthy, fully healthy. So for now, I think patience is key, and results can wait. What matters is that our Queen Wen is back.
Right, I agree. Realistically speaking, rust is inevitable. I think what matters to her first goal is to test her elbow under competitive pressure.
Yeah.
And I mean, the home crowd in China make a huge boost for this process. I mean, I would call it successful if she can get a couple of wins and, most importantly, leaves the Asian swing healthy, as you said. Anything beyond that would be a fantastic bonus. I think this is all about building the foundation for a bigger 2026 season.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, for Zheng Qinwen's comeback, I mean, obviously we're expecting to see or hoping to see flashes of, some of the brilliance that we've seen from her in the past. But I think the most important thing for her is just load management and figuring out how to get through the remainder of the season, to get match fitness back, to regain confidence in her elbow and, just be able to make steady progress week after week. And like you said, Yang Guang, to, I think, prepare for a stellar 2026 season. So, yeah, look, a deep run in, any of the tournaments that she comes back in would be fantastic. Whether that's the best thing for her in terms of, managing a return to her highest level is, debatable. But I think, herself and her team, I think that they're going to be very cautious and will have an approach and a plan in mind in terms of how to get her back to her best. And I think that the focus for her needs to be not necessarily winning, WTA tournaments or that sort of thing. I think all of the focus is going to be on claiming that first Grand Slam at some point. So I think that is going to be the kind of prize that, Zheng Qinwen and her team have her eye on, particularly going into next season. And I think the remainder of this season is going to be building her up towards giving her the best possible chance of claiming a Grand Slam tournament next season. So yeah, I think when we watch her, it's going to be fantastic to have her back. Of course, expect some rustiness, maybe, a poor performance here and there, or even a surprise good performance here and there. But I think the main thing that we need to do as Zheng Qinwen fans is just witness week after week or month after month the progress that she's making. If she's, taking steps towards getting back to her best in terms of performance and confidence. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will be confident as Zheng Qinwen fans that as we enter the 2026 season, she'll be fully fit, injury-free, full of confidence, fully rested, and hopefully have the best possible chance of finally getting over that line and lifting a Grand Slam trophy to go along with that fantastic victory that we saw at the Olympics in 2024.
Right. Finally, let's zoom out and take a look at the Chinese swing from a broader picture. I think China's role in the tennis world nowadays internationally is growing very fast.
Yeah.
Financially and strategically, it's a vital piece of the tour's calendar now, linking the final Grand Slam of the season, the US Open, and the season-ending tournaments. I would say the return of these events post the pandemic was a huge relief for the ATP and WTA.
Yeah.
So, Tianyu, where do you think China stands now in the international tennis landscape? Now we have, two WTA 1000s, one ATP 1000, and plus a couple of WTA 500 and 250 events. So what does this tell you?
Well, I think just in terms of the bigger picture, I think Chinese tennis has really come a long way. From even 5 or 10 years ago. I think the depth of talent is much better now because we've got young players like Zheng Qinwen making waves and veterans like Zhang Zhizhen and Wu Yibing who've helped lay the foundation. But if we're being completely honest, I still don't think I think we still don't have the one figure like Li Na who can win a Grand Slam and carry the sport into the mainstream spotlight again. I think that's still the missing piece. But where China has really grown tremendously is as a host for the sport. I think like the China Open, Shanghai Masters, and even smaller events like the Jiangxi Open, they show that the country has world-class infrastructure and we can deliver top-level tournaments. So for players, it's an attractive spot on the calendar because the facilities are good, the organization is smooth, and the fan support is growing. And these tournaments matter because they keep tennis visible in our country. Every time fans get to see stars like Alcaraz, Sinner, Sabalenka, or Swiatek in person, it inspires the next generation. And the more China stays connected to the tennis calendar, the more likely it is we'll see another breakthrough in the years to come. So right now, I think China's role is twofold. One, providing a stage for the best players in the world and building momentum for its future stars. So if Zheng Qinwen or another young talent can one day lift a slam trophy again like Li Na does, that would complete the picture.
Right, and I noticed that as more Chinese cities host tennis tournaments for the ATP and WTA season, Chinese spectators are turning more professional.
Yeah.
I mean, previously for the China Open or even, the Wuhan Open, fans walked around between points in the venue, which disturbed a lot of players' attention.
I remember we had that problem in Hangzhou as well.
Right,
when we watched the tennis Yangguang, geez, the fans were getting into so much trouble from some of the officiators. It was so funny to watch. And like when you caught a photographer or fan, they would like freeze like this. Or it was one of my favorite memories from that tournament. I loved it.
Yeah, even Zheng Qinwen was disrupted a couple of times and complained to the umpire about the domestic audience. That's crazy. But now I noticed less those situations, and the fans are watching the match in an orderly manner.
Yeah.
And they are getting more and more professional.
Yes.
Yeah. Brandon, what does the more and more Chinese tennis tournaments on the WTA and ATP Tour tell you about China's role in the tennis world, and what does it mean to the domestic players and international audience?
Yeah, well, away from the fans becoming more professional, which is always great to see. I mean, the enthusiasm from the Chinese fans has always been fantastic. Even when they're moving around, it's not a place of disrespect. They just get so excited or, kind of distracted by what's going on, and they forget about, how in tennis, you need silence at certain moments and that kind of thing. And as a fan, especially if you're watching, Zheng Qinwen, I think it's sometimes very difficult to keep your emotions intact. So some of those movements were definitely very, very understandable. But in terms of China's place on the tennis map, I think it's just expanding and growing and becoming more and more special year after year. I think, for example, this year with the Shanghai Masters and the China Open, and like you guys have mentioned, even some of the, the smaller events in other cities, I think, for example, the the ITF, the WTA, ATP. I think they are going to be thrilled that all of these competitions are making a comeback, and I think they can also, as always, rely on Chinese event organizers to put on a fantastic show. I think we always see fantastic events being organized, particularly, in Shanghai and Beijing. They always put on a fantastic show. And, with the emergence of someone like Zheng Qinwen, I think that's, I agree with Tianyu. I think we are still waiting to get to that point where we see someone from China, guaranteed, or, a serious contender for a Grand Slam tournament on a regular basis on the men's and women's side. But I think with the growth of the sport and the growth of the amount of tournaments taking place in China, I think that we're not too far away from that happening.
Yeah.
And the more and more locals taking part in the sport, the better chance we have of getting to that point. So I don't think China is very far away from having a true, standout superstar in the sport. Even though Zheng Qinwen and a couple of, other veterans of the sport have done fantastically well in the sport, and I don't think we've seen the best of Zheng Qinwen yet. I think that even in the years to come, we will see tennis players at that level from China, or even at a higher level, coming out in the men's and women's game. So that's going to be a very exciting progress point to watch from Chinese tennis, as well as the improved and increased number of tournaments taking place in China. I mean, I think of the impact of someone away from tennis like Eileen Gu, the impact that she had on our winter sports in China, and the impact that someone like Li Na and Zhang Qinwen is having on tennis in China, along with the increased tournaments. I think that's going to hugely benefit tennis's growth in China, not just in terms of your normal citizens taking part and the increase in the number of tournaments, but eventually identifying that superstar. So I think 5 years time, 10 years time, I think that we are going to have a serious superstar from China in the men's and women's game to compete with Zheng Qinwen. And I think that going forward, we are definitely going to see consistent Grand Slam victories from Chinese tennis players going forward. You have my word on that.
Right. Stats show that China has the second largest tennis population in the world. So that has laid a huge, solid foundation for China's success, potential success in the future in the tennis world. And one proven situation is that Boinchak, the Chinese male player, has entered the Shanghai Masters this year based on his world rankings, not getting a wild card to enter the tournament. That's a huge improvement from men's tennis these days in China. The Chinese swing is full of unpredictability and is always thrilling. Let's see which of the stars will shine the brightest for the Chinese tournaments. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.